How can we avoid repeating history if we can't agree on its basic facts in the first place? When it comes to the Korean War, which ravaged this peninsula from 1950 to 53, the past is still very much haunting the present. For instance, South Korea's foreign ministries reiterated this past weekend that the war was triggered by a North Korean invasion after Chinese President Xi Jinping had cast it as a fight against American imperialist invaders. And with North Korea's official Nodong Shinmun newspaper carrying a Sunday editorial insisting the North and China are seeking to advance ties, we might easily ask what's going on here. From the perspective of North Korea, backed during the war by China against South Korea and UN forces led by the United States, the country's state media showed leader Kim Jong-un visiting a cemetery last week to honor Chinese soldiers who died during the Korean War. And while Kim has been to the site before to commemorate the North's claimed victory in what it calls the Fatherland Liberation War, this time he went there to mark 70 years since China entered the war. He also praised the participation of Chinese soldiers as an historic contribution to the Great Victory. Note that the war actually only ended in an armistice, but language is very important here. China, for its part, refers to the Korean War as the war to resist America and aid Korea. And that name reflects why it continues to be so important to China, which maintains an alliance with North Korea, while tensions with the US are more serious than they've been in decades. For the North, it's easy to see why it would want to be close to China at a time of economic challenges and stalled nuclear talks with the US. What's most interesting is that Beijing has stepped up Korean War propaganda amid its ongoing trade war with the US, with leader Xi Jinping participating in multiple events surrounding this year's October 19th anniversary of China's entry into the war. Speaking at one of these, Xi said the spirit of that war will inspire the Chinese people and the Chinese nation to overcome all difficulties and obstacles and prevail over all enemies. By framing itself as entering the Korean War to safeguard peace, China ignores the fact that North Korea invaded the South. And the impact of all this is real. Even super band BTS have been hit with a boycott in China after member RM was criticized by some Chinese for focusing on South Korea and the US when recently honoring those sacrificed during the Korean War rather than Chinese casualties. It's interesting because Seoul has been pushing as much as any side for a peace treaty to end the conflict, but China and the US remain in the picture. South Korea is caught in a Cold War scenario between the interests of Washington and Beijing being tied to the US militarily and China economically. And Beijing hasn't been afraid in the past to give South Korea as a whole the BTS treatment when upset with Seoul, which doesn't bode well for China playing the role of peacemaker on this peninsula going forward, at least not on terms that would satisfy Seoul and Washington. So it's very concerning that we risk repeating lessons from what's been dubbed the forgotten war in the US, despite the millions of sacrifices on all sides.